Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Wild Portishead show. And, well, tonight, as you can see, truly have on Wild. We're actually broadcasting from outdoors. Actually, this is green screen, and Industrial Light and Magic have just added this. It's very realistic, though, don't you think, Chris?
Mine is as well. Look at mine. Look at mine behind. I mean, that took me hours to get that absolutely right, I tell you.
But the amount of money ILM have spent doing little CGI birds that you might see flying in the background, it's a staggering amount of budget. We haven't got any money to do anything else now. I've just blown it all on the background. Anyway.
Do we have any money?
I think enough for a pint and a packet of crisps at the Black Horse at some stage. But anyway, welcome along to tonight's show. We're very, very grateful tonight to be joined by Councillor Nicola Holland, who's on the executive of North Somerset Council. And tonight we're going to be talking about North Somerset Council's Rewilding programme. So I think, without further ado, we'll say hello to Nicola. Nicola, can you describe what your role is, please?
Good evening, Jonathan. Good evening, Chris. Thank you for inviting me. My role, you say I'm on the exec. I'm a lowly assistant exec. I'm currently working with Catherine Gibbons, who is in charge of children and lifelong learning, on an education and skills strategy, hoping to bridge the gap between the jobs that are out there and the skills that are needed for children as they're coming through school, through people who have unfortunately lost their jobs, for people who are looking to change. We need to bridge that gap, as I said, between the jobs that are out there and what people can do. But I also have been fighting long and hard to persuade people that wildlife conservation, rewilding, is something to look forward to something to embrace, something to nurture and cherish, not something to dismiss out of hand, which is why you've asked me here tonight.
I was say, what is your specific role within North Somerset with regard to their rewilding programme?
Well, I am on the climate change working group. When Councillor Bridget Petty first formed the group, she asked me to be a part of that. We are all sharing, all the people on the climate change working group are sharing ideas, sharing knowledge, listening to officers, advising officers, getting advice from officers. And one of the things that we're looking at is the biodiversity across the district and the lack of.
Chris?
Well, I mean, let's jump straight in, if you like. When Wild Portishead was basically set up, one of the reasons why we were set up was that we wanted to see that ground-up approach, that public-led approach to nature recovery, climate change, etc., etc. And that basically meant people taking the lead. Now, if you look around at the moment, you don't have to look too far to find public, seemingly, in some quarters, I have to say, Nicola, quite disgruntled with what's going on, saying that things have been left which shouldn't have been left, and it's the council being lazy. I think rewilding was the wrong term to come up with in the first place. And I think, secondly, the public needed to be taken along with this, so to speak. And I think it needed to be what we were setting out in the beginning, which was that full ground up approach where the public basically led the thing with expertise help. And in that way, they were coming along for the ride, so to speak, but they were also making the decisions on the ground, which is what we set up from our, as you will well remember, from our folk hall meeting back in 2019.
I like to think that the public embracing this and leading, as you say, from the ground up can still be happening. Well, it still surely should be happening in people's own personal spaces, their own gardens, their own nearby. And they should be sharing the idea with their neighbours who maybe find it a little bit untidy. When it comes to what the council have been doing, we've been working with the council-owned land. looking at particularly the amenity grass, what is known as amenity grass, which is basically the grass that is constantly mown and constantly trimmed and constantly kept completely and utterly devoid of all flowers, all insects, all wildlife. And so in taking some of that amenity land, not all of it, some of the amenity land, and introducing long grass and introducing tree planting, it was done under a motion that was put forward very nearly 2 years to the day by Catherine Gibbons for rewilding. And we use the term rewilding because that's what the public understand when they look around and they see grass unmown. If they know it's being rewilded, they're going to shrug and say, okay, or they're going to go, wow, that's wonderful. Whereas if they just saw the grass being left unmown, they might say that's the council cost cutting. And actually, it's not a cost cutting exercise. When it comes down to it, it's pretty much leveling out. It's not saving money, it's not spending money. It's pretty much leveling out from what I've heard from my conversations with officers. So yes, the term rewilding, now people know more about it because it's being talked about more in the press. It's being talked about on social media. People are more familiar with the term rewilding. And Chris, we've had this conversation. We know what rewilding actually means, and what's actually happening with council-owned land isn't, strictly speaking, the traditional rewilding. But what might be done under those circumstances, it would be very, very difficult to carry the public along with us. The public might be more, they might be more adverse to it. They might be more willing to make.
If I can just jump in there, if you remember from our 2019 meeting, we had the folk hall absolutely packed. So I'm talking about Portishead only now. And we could have filled that room, I think, twice over, Jonathan, from the messages we had.
Yeah.
And the plan was basically was never a rewilding as such, but it was certainly utilizing the local community as a ground up approach, which would have been cost saving in the first place because we would have got the people to do it. Yes, we would have yet to utilize council land, but I'd like to think as taxpayers, we are part of the council land.
Well, I was actually, Chris, it was something I was going to point out, is that when, it is referred to as council land, that is actually land which, strictly speaking, is, it's the land of the taxpayers of North Somerset Council. It is paid for and owned on their behalf by North Somerset Council, but it isn't, it's not North Somerset Council's land that they can just do without any do what they want without any kind of input from the public. And I have to say, Councillor Holland, one of the things I did notice from your opening description of what you did, you described how you liaise with other councillors. You liaise with other councillors, you liaise with other departments, you liaise with other officers. The thing that struck me there was, and this comes back to this ground up approach, is not liaising with the public, not involving the public, not actually bringing the public on board to actually be the eyes and the ears on the ground that can actually assist and work with the council. Because I think the problem we've got at the moment is the amount of resistance that has been met by some aspects of North Somerset Council's rewilding programme at the moment. It feels like that you're working against the public. And I think the concern I have, and the concern Chris has, is that sometimes you only have a once in a generation opportunity to get people on board. If you lose them at an early stage, you're in danger of losing them completely. Is that a fair assessment, Chris?
I think it is, and Nicola, we do really appreciate you coming on this evening. And
yeah.
One of the things that I want to come from this, and I want you to take back as strongly as you possibly can, is a lot more dialogue. And I'll say that on behalf of not just ourselves here in Portishead, but also our good friends in Yatton and Kongsbury, Yakwag, And I know they're watching this evening, and also I know that Wild Western are watching as well tonight, and also with the good people down there. And I think, if anything can come from tonight, is you taking back that message to North Somerset Council that we want dialogue, and we have in our groups the expertise to actually help with this. And I know I've said it and I've been rebuffed for it, but you've now got people in other groups saying it. We're being bypassed, and you've got the expertise on the ground, and we can really help with this, and we can engage with the public, because basically we are the public.
There was an initial consultation, and when it comes to council consultations, they're famously, even though they're well publicised, shall I say, the response isn't always as much as we'd hoped for. With the Rewilding consultation, the response was so much higher than normal. And it was pretty much, I can't remember the exact figures, but it was nearly all in favour. All the consultation responses were nearly all in favour of what we were doing. When it comes to consulting with specific groups, we agree. We admit we've had this discussion again. Maybe we should have consulted with specific groups alongside specific stakeholders, is a council term that they love to use. And certainly with the green infrastructure strategy, I do feel that that's been done. You yourself, Chris, were one of the participants in the stakeholder consultations. So when it comes to rewilding, initially it was it was very new, and it was it started off. It was supposed to involve lots and lots and lots of volunteers, and then COVID struck. The first year's planting, there were 5,000 trees. This last winter, we have planted an additional 20,000 trees. We now have funding to create a role, a ranger, who is now taking on the rewilding volunteers, all the people that signed up, and we have about 400 people who signed up as rewilding volunteers to go around the district. People can check out their emails. If you've signed up as a rewilding volunteer, you should have received an email asking if you want to join the session. I myself have signed up for the golf course session next week. So Ian is going to act as a ranger, looking after the volunteers, and he is going to be working with groups as they want to work. He's going to be happy to talk to new groups as they want to set up. I have actually had this from him myself, so I'm not just giving him additional roles, additional tasks he doesn't want. He's actually was the warden. Well, officially is the warden of the nature reserve. So he knows this area particularly well, but he's going to be acting as a ranger. He has funding for 1 year to act as ranger across the district, across the whole district. So when we talk about working with people and working from the ground up, hopefully this is where we're going to be able to start. As I say, the intention was to work with volunteers on the ground. The intention was there to begin with, and then suddenly that option was taken out of our hands, unfortunately.
But I think certainly I'm just reading some of the comments that are coming up here. I've got a couple of questions about the consultation, which we'll come to in a second. But I think one of the observations here is you're trying to set up groups of volunteers, but there are already groups and bodies out there whose expertise North Somerset Council could have bought into, could have asked, could have actually consulted, and then worked from there. The general feeling again that we're getting, that we've certainly got, is that this is going to be rewilding, but this is going to be rewilding on North Somerset Council's terms. And if you're not actually if you're not going to buy into how it's going to be done, then that's it. You're going to be left on the sidelines. And in fact, one of the observations we've had here from somebody tonight, which is that the response to the consultation was high, but the info in the consultation was poor. It was not detailed enough. As the scheme was rolled out, North Somerset Council were updating the live map, which left no record of what was presented in the original consultation. And apparently you can't, if you want to see what the original consultation was, you can't, because apparently it no longer exists. But
you mean the map itself?
No, the actual consultation. The actual full consultation.
The council will have a record of that. If somebody wants to see the original consultation, email me.
And is that fully up to date with the information that came through?
How do you mean?
Well, as it started and how it ended.
How it's developed. It's a lot. I mean, things change. For example, where they planned to put trees on the golf course, they found out once they actually got down there, they found that there was natural succession coming from the bottom where they'd actually planned to plant. So the natural succession meant that they didn't need to start planting down there. So they moved up very slightly. Mm-hmm. Everything happens. Everything's live. Everything's changing because nature changes. Yeah. If anybody wants to see the original consultation, email me. I will get hold of it and I will pass it on.
Is the map also available as well?
The original map. I can't guarantee that the original map is still around, but if I can't find it, then no, actually it should be, because I'm fairly certain that there was screenshots put online. I'm fairly certain there were screenshots put on Facebook, on various other social media sites. So there should be somewhere a copy of the original map.
Okay.
And as I say, because we've had people come back to us because they weren't aware of the original consultation. So we have people coming back to us with specific areas saying, please don't. So we've made changes there. We've made compromises. We are listening to people and we are compromising. And as I said before, because we're using the word rewilding, but it's not rewilding in its traditional sense, but we're having to do what we're doing because we're trying to pull the public along with us. And that includes the public who don't want us to do this at all. If we left it to natural succession, they'd look out there and they'd see bramble and they'd see scrub and they'd say, there's the council not doing their job. What are we paying for? And they wouldn't understand.
Sorry, can I
so
come
many
in on
of them, Chris, sorry, Chris. So many people still don't understand that the bramble and the scrub is a good thing. I see people, there's a hedge down there. I see people in the middle of summer pruning that hedge, and I actually have stopped and said to this little old lady, I said, I'm really, really sorry, sweet, but you shouldn't be doing that, especially not at this time of year. But
you see that again. Well, unfortunately, I would say that again is a communication problem, and that is somewhere where local groups and eyes on the ground and ears on the ground could actually be out there advising and actually doing some of the legwork, to ensure that the habitat. But they can't do that if the district council isn't involving them at the very early stages. Just go back to my question that I asked just now, is that it's all very well appointing a ranger and setting up volunteers, but are you not in danger of duplicating what is already out there but isn't being utilized?
Well, you've already got the group together, Yakwag are already together, Wild West are already together. All they need to do is get hold of Ian and say, we're here on the ground, we are already volunteers, we are here on the ground, please, let us help you, or you can help us by who's going to act as a conduit between volunteer groups and the council.
But
that's where groups such as yourself come in.
But I think it's fair to
conduits between the public
I think it's fair to say that for the last 18 months, that is the conversation that groups have been trying to have with North Somerset Council, and it just hasn't happened.
No.
I know.
Opportunity to work with the public, unfortunately, over the last 18 months.
Well, we've got online. we you know, and this is what the other groups are saying. So I mean, can I jump in, because you didn't let me jump in then, Jonathan?
No, that's fine.
And that's basically back to let roll all the way back to part of this is nature recovery. And if we're going to have nature recovery, I mean, one of the best habitats for nature recovery to take place, without a shadow of a doubt, is that woodland edge effect. So it's scrub. And if we're already saying that we're not going to have scrub, we're going to plant trees. And okay, I understand you're looking at alternatives to the plastic jungle that's out there at the moment. But if we're going to plant trees, then for goodness sake, if we're planting trees next to woodland and not letting woodland expand on its own, we really need to think again that nature recovery is not a part of it, because that is where nature will recover. Those are facts.
Absolutely.
That's what happens.
So with the trees being planted, I expect you've noticed there's no mowing going on around. It's all just being left as is. Yeah? There's no mowing around the whips. Yes?
Mm-hmm.
So
Yes, but will there be scrub, Nicola?
Yes, but scrub will come in naturally, won't it then? If they're being planted up next to an already existing hedgerow or piece of woodland.
Then you didn't need tree guards.
Unfortunately, there are people out there who don't notice the whips because they are so small. And one of the things the tree guards do, I agree that in some areas, the tree guards have been viewed badly and treated badly. I don't know what it is, but apparently it seems that Portishead has come off worst with the tree guard issue, because no other area seems to have had the problem that we've had with them being broken. The assumption is that it's dogs or people who don't notice them and knock them as they walk. That's all I can. That's because I don't see them being broken. The only time I actually know where they were deliberately broken is up on Battery Point, where there were reports of a group of people who were kicking them. But in general, the tree guards are there to stop dogs knocking them, to stop dogs damaging the trees, to stop people walking, so people can actually see them.
But Nicola, let me jump in again there. Battery Point is a really good case, and that's basically because there's a wood there called the Eastwood. All you had to do with the amount of trees that you've now planted next to Eastwood, and the amount of plastic that's there and got damaged by whatever, and some of that plastic will have now got brittle and gone into the ground. What you could have done there, which was the type of things that we were advocating as an organization in 2019, that was just simply fence round a little bit of Eastwood. You didn't need to go in as far as you did, and that way the public would not get upset about losing open ground, and you could say, right, by a certain percentage, Eastwood will expand on its own. The scrub, the long grass would have come first, the scrub would have formed after, and the young trees would have come out, and those young trees would have been related to the trees that are in Eastwood and not brought in from the outside. There's a wonderful paper out from a lady in London who I forget her name now, but I've got the paper, and I'm more than willing to share it with you, Nicola. It's brilliant, and it basically is called The Lonely Trees, and it's a study that she's done in London, whereby trees in some trees in London, she reckons, are as lonely as some of the people that live there, and that's basically because they've got no connection to the existing trees that are there because they're part of tree planting schemes. And I'll let you have a copy of it. It's absolutely brilliant and well worth a look. And I'm only sad I can't remember the author's name at the moment. But you know, that could have been done. That could have been done there, and that would have been cost saving all the way through. So and also for biodiversity, it'd have been win-win-win. And for the general public, you could have got people like Jonathan and myself to go along, talk to the public, have meetings, enthuse the public about the wonderful new wildlife that was going to be there.
And this is what this kind of thing is all about, infusing the public, because unfortunately I still see people out and about, and I hear what they're saying, and they're muttering about the council not mowing and the council leaving scrub and the council leaving a mess. I hear people as I'm walking past, I heard people. I was walking home last night, and I heard a couple of chaps talking to each other about. They didn't actually say the council. They said, it's them, and it's a cost-cutting exercise, and they're not doing their job properly. As somebody was actually taking clippers to a piece of long grass, to a strip of long grass.
Well,
it's communications. It's communications.
It is. But we need to bring the public along. And if we've done it the truly traditional way, my fear is, and the fear at every level in the team, is that we wouldn't have brought the public along. We would have had more complaints, and we would have ended up alienating people.
But we already had.
What we're doing instead of, I mean, whenever I refer to it, I've stopped referring to it as rewilding. I refer to it as the tree planting and the long grass project, because that's essentially what it is. We're helping nature. We're assisting nature. We're giving nature a little bit of a handhold across the street. We're just sort of, we're making a start. We're making an effort, and this is on 30% of the amenity grass, and it's not even. We haven't even reached that figure yet. We're actually only at where was it? Somebody told me 25 hectares at the moment. Eventually, it'll cover 30% of 900 hectares. We manage 900. I'm not going to say own. We manage 900 hectares of amenity land, and it's going to be 30% of that. So. The public out there who say we don't want it, we're listening. We're saying we know we don't want it everywhere.
Well,
but what we're doing is we're giving it a helping hand.
Go back to 2019. There were many new councillors in that room, and there were many older councillors in that room. Those that had just lost their posts, but from that. We had the mechanism, and we had, I feel we had the public behind us. We had a lot of conversation about it. And let me just say, Nicola, that one of my reasons for, apart from the wildlife, I could get really selfish and just talk about wildlife, but one of my reasons behind this in the first place, and this is when I started speaking to the other councillors, the ones that were in before you took over, so to speak.
Yeah.
One of the reasons for talking to them was the simple fact of I was looking out at grass being cut, sometimes twice a week, where it didn't need to be cut at this time of the year. And I was thinking to myself, why are we spending all this money on things like this when we haven't got enough money for human needs? And you probably have guessed now what I'm about to say, and that is one of my inspirations was the fact that there's not enough money within the local social budget, and I know that for a fact. Well, and you know that I know I'm going to get told that for example that money is not there because that's for the social budget and this budget's for the environment budget, but it's still money. It's still taxpayers' money, and the reason why I and Jonathan set up Wild Portishead is again being public led, being totally ground up, and not costing the earth.
But it's not. We're not. It's pretty much as I said. It's a balanced. It's anything that we've done with the rewilding isn't costing money. We've got the whips off. We've got the whips from Woodland Trust. The Woodland Trust donated them. They have donated the tree guards as well. The maintenance of the long grass, obviously, there's less cutting, but there's different kinds of machinery being used. It's pretty much balanced. Where we've saved money in one area, we've spent it in another. And across the board, Chris, honestly, the amount of money that the environment team get is peanuts. They are the bottom rung of the ladder when it comes to sort of the money.
I can imagine.
Right down there. And as I say, John's only managed to procure the role for Ian as ranger because we've had external funding come in with a kind of grant. So somebody else is actually covering his role on the nature reserve from that grant funding so that he can work with the volunteers. We know him. We've worked with him for a long time. He's a fabulous chap, really is. and he knows how to work with people. He knows how to work with the public, and he's a fantastic go-between between us at council level, between the public, and I count myself as a member of the public as well. I've met him. He's very personable. He knows how to work with the public. He knows how to work with volunteers, and I think we're lucky to have him as a ranger, and it's not cost us any money. To be fair, Chris, you know yourself that the adult social care is ring-fenced. All that is ring-fenced. We're not stealing any money from that. We are spending money that is that much at the end of the day. It's compared to the total budget. It's a fraction. It's a fraction of a fraction. Honestly, they should have more money. They really should.
I'm just going to look in here, talk about the because we've got some comments in. I think we do need to involve people who are watching tonight. We've got a comment here from Faith Moulin, who says the grass is still constantly mown. NSC rolls over the grass cutting contract, and I think this is one of the problems. Again, this is to do with eyes on the ground. Is the areas? It's what could best be described as spreadsheet ecology. Is areas are being mown whether they needed to be done or not. Some areas are being overmown, some areas aren't being touched at all. And to give you an example of about eyes on the ground and trying to get the public on board. This is from a social media. Hang about. Let's just get rid of this comment. This is from a social media post here, which kind of highlights the problem. This is a bench on Blackdown, which. Okay, the grass has been allowed to grow, but but it's been allowed to grow up through the bench, rendering the bench completely useless. The problem we've got here is that a member of the public took it into their own hands to actually clear that bench. Now,
and that's fabulous. I love it when that sort of thing happens, because that's making the bench usable. When it comes down to strimming around edges, it's purely down. That really is down to budget. There is not enough money. There is nowhere near enough money in the team. There is on strimming. There is one strimming team, 2 people for the entire district. And when you're talking this time of year, I mean, obviously we've had a very, very hot, dry spell. But when you've got warm and wet, I mean, you know how fast things grow. And if we have 2 people across the entire district trying to keep up with it, something is going to fall. And that's purely down to budget. That's purely down to the fact that the team do not have enough money.
Right. One of the problems you got there is if members of the public do take it into their hands to start doing kind of DIY work like this, is where does it start and where does it end? Because you'll end up with hedgerows being chopped back. You'll end up, as we've had an instance in Portishead, trees actually being chopped down. Now, this bench actually does link into another comment that somebody's just made here, which I think is worth bringing up. And this is Julie Hitchens. She says, there's a big worry about the long grass cutting and hedgehogs. There have been horrible stories of hedgehogs being killed by the cutters in other authorities. Can the cutting schedule and method be looked at to prevent such disasters in North Somerset? We have people here in Whirl dreading the grass cutting. And what Julie is referring to there is this story from Devon, Dorset rather, which was to do with how the long grass was cut using essentially a synthesizer jingle. Apparently, it was cut using a kind of like a threshing machine, which managed to wipe out an entire family of hedgehogs in the process. Now, I know that somebody has contacted North Somerset Council with concerns about that, and the response they got from an officer was to say, quote, the machines we use to cut the tall grass at the end of the season are large and make enough notice of vibrations that any remaining wildlife will have enough notice to move on. Our operatives check the area while litter picking and do keep an eye out as much as possible before they cut. But unfortunately, due to the size of our estate and the amount of time they have to get around, it is not possible for them to check every area in detail. So we're trying to, this is where things start to fall apart a bit, because we're trying to look out for the environment. We're trying to encourage wildlife. We're trying to also, in terms of hedgehogs in North Somerset, we are trying to look after them. There are the signage programs, which you could do an entire program on the problems of getting hold of the signage. Then we have a situation here where we don't want a repeat of what happened in Dorset, but there is the potential for it because there just isn't. That there isn't the infrastructure to actually check to make sure that before you go in there with a flaming machine, that it's actually safe to do so. And I would say, is that, this is a member of the public concerned about this, and that's the response they've got.
I'm not surprised. I'd be concerned. I hadn't actually heard that story. That's awful. But I'll be honest with you. It's either we grow the long grass and we use the large machines once a year. And they are noisy. I've seen them in action. And they're not that fast either. I mean, they're fast enough, but they're not, moving through at a rate of knots. But it's if we do that and we cut it once a year, or we don't grow the long grass and we keep it mown. I mean, Jonathan, what would you rather we do?
Or you bring the local communities on board, and
that would be fabulous. That would be fabulous. If we let you know when it's going to happen, then people can be out there walking in front or whatever. There was talk at one point, pre-COVID, there was talk about sizing training. That would be fabulous, wouldn't it? It's on hold. Obviously, it's on hold. And the Ranger program actually, if we get funding beyond this year and the Ranger program takes off, then we could get people, organised groups, sizing. That would be one option, but it's not currently going to happen because of COVID issues. And as I say, we've only got the one Ranger.
But there we go. That's an instance where engaging with the public, or indeed engaging with a local group to say, can you give us some advice on what we should do in this particular instance? Why that? As of a minute ago, you were giving us only two options, which was either do it or leave it.
Well,
we've just given you a third.
Jonathan, that's why I asked you for your opinion and for your help and your advice.
Yeah. Can I just say that Ian Parsons has just contacted via YouTube, and he says to tell you that basically machines make hedgehogs roll up and stay still. Just a comment from Ian.
So I will pass the message on, but local groups are actively happy to help when it comes down to mowing and making sure that the land is clear effectively.
Well, I think it's fair to say local groups have been happy to help from the word go, and this is 18 months ago. So it shouldn't come as a surprise that local groups are happy to help. We got a comment here. We got a comment here from Evelyn Groundsell. She says, "I feel excluded from participation by the approach in North Somerset, and North Somerset Council has damaged trees, open limestone grassland near Western Woods, where we had orchids and more generation. Portishead people never give up on our town. Please give our land back to Portishead residents who understand the local natural history." That's a separate thing.
Can I ask Evelyn to actually email me where the damaged trees are, please? Can I find out about that? I will find out about that.
One of the other comments, this is a comment from Debbie Apted about we need to find alternatives to the awful plastic protectors for the trees. These are continually being pulled off and disintegrate in the sun. I appreciate the need of protectors for all these trees being planted, but please not plastic. Ideally, we let trees grow naturally with bramble coverage, then there'll be no need for any man-made intervention. Now, one of the points I was going to make going back about 20 minutes, which is one of the problems that we've had with the plastic tree guards in Portishead is that, excuse me, they have had the misfortune to be planted in extremely windy locations. Excuse me. So you've got Battery Point, you've got the golf course, which I think any kind of preparation or looking at those sites, it was going to be fairly obvious that you've got strong southwesterly and sometimes northerly winds coming in. Those tree guards aren't going to last 5 minutes, frankly. And also there have been instances where some of the ones that we've seen have actually started disintegrating because then some for one reason or another, are not quite UV hardy. So you've got a mixture of reasons there. I know Portishead Town Council did write to North Somerset Council to say, to words to the effect of, we would rather you didn't use the plastic tree guards in the town because it is causing...
Excuse me. They are looking into alternatives. This is what we were given by the Woodland Trust. This is what the Woodland Trust advised us to use. And across the rest of the district, there doesn't seem to be a problem, unfortunately.
But it still goes back to the other point that in some areas they weren't needed at all. And this is where I think, Nicola, that if you consider the expertise that you've got within these local groups, I've been saying things until I'm literally, well, as of today, red in the face. And I just don't feel I'm being listened to anymore. And I thought I was on my own. But when I talk to some people who've got 20, 25 years experience in this field, they're feeling exactly the same thing. So I don't feel isolated anymore. I don't feel like North Somerset saying, we don't want to know you. You just stay away.
But we do.
Because that's exactly what it feels like. But that's exactly what it feels like.
I tell you what, there's going to be an even better way of working with the public, ground up.
Yep.
They've just received, the team's just received a £1,000 lottery grant, and John's creating a Rewilding Champions project.
Yeah.
So this basically, in partnership with Avon Wildlife Trust, he's organised it so that Avon Wildlife Trust are going to be, they're running it for us basically. They're going to create a monitoring program for our rewilding. This includes training. This will include training so that people will actually know how to identify key species, key plants, key animals, insects, so that we can actually do an audit of what's going on now and see how it's developing and how it's improving our biodiversity. People will then be able to go back to their communities. They'll be able to share their knowledge. They'll be able to create, as I said before, working with Ian, creating new groups, working with yourselves. Yes, working with the already existing groups. There's even 2 specific roles being created within this project to actually work with people in deprived neighbourhoods, deprived areas, so that this knowledge can be shared and we can get people on board with the whole project, and we can actually get some data. What we need is data to find out exactly where we are now, and how it's improving. And that's working with the public, and that's working with groups like yourself, and that's working with all the groups, all the volunteers across the area at a grassroots level, literally grassroots.
It is and it isn't, because you've gone straight for a big national charity, which is the Wildlife Trusts. So it's kind of like, to use an analogy, it's like you're driving to Birmingham, but you're constantly going via Edinburgh all the time. And
but this is Avon Wildlife Trust. Avon Wildlife Trust, who know Avon, who will be training people who aren't necessarily that involved. So, people like yourselves are very, very involved, but most people out there aren't. Most people out there wouldn't be able to tell, one type of insect from another.
Can I jump in, Jonathan? Can I jump in there, Jonathan? How long does this project last, Nicola?
It's a 2-year. It's a 2-year project. It's £1,000 funded. Okay. 2 years.
100,000.
Rewilding Champions. So if people want to get on board with that, I'm not quite sure. I'm not quite sure how out there at the moment it is. The Avon Wildlife Trust are running it. So I would contact anybody out there
anything about it.
Is interested. I think it's fairly. John told me about it not that long ago, so it's fairly recent.
In terms of recording, sorry, Jonathan, I'm going to jump in. In terms of recording in wildlife, as far as I'm aware, we certainly are, and I know Yakwag will be. We're already recording wildlife within our own areas.
Excellent.
And
we need the data.
Well, the data's already out there, Nicola. That's the point. All the data
not in every area, not right across the district. Not every area.
I appreciate that, But what I'm saying is that you know, what we need is, what we need is to make sure that we involve the Bristol Regional Ecological Record Centre. And we also need, because the data certainly that I'm producing goes up to the National Biodiversity Database, and that then filters back to the relevant record centre. So, I mean, your first port of call ought to be the record centre to find out what we've got. And if you actually have a look, there's an awful lot of data already there that's accumulated over donkey's years.
Absolutely. So, we're just looking to get as much data as possible. You can't disagree with getting as much data as possible.
No, absolutely not. Data's a wonderful thing.
And we need volunteers to cover the area, because there's no way councils have enough money to fund something like this. So we need volunteers. This is what we need the public to be on our side about. And to be fair, the majority of people, I think, are on side with rewilding. But we do still have people who look out at the golf course and they just see long grass and they think it looks a mess and they think it's just the council neglecting their duties. These people, unfortunately, are out there, and we have to work with them as well. We have to leave. I know there was the comment earlier about the council still mowing grass. As I said, it's 30% of our amenity grass that we're using in this rewilding project, the tree planting and long grass project. 30%. The rest of it is still being mown. And we're trying now we're 2 years into this, and we're trying now to see if we can work with, and this is where you guys and all the other groups across the district will absolutely be, you know, so vital. We're trying to work with landowners now and see how we can work with landowners to improve the biodiversity on their land.
Right. Just a quick observation there is that you've just said that we're 2 years into North Somerset's rewilding program.
Tree planting and long grass. Yeah.
Well, yeah. And now you're talking about bringing in the expertise of the local groups 2 years later. The observation I'd make, Councillor Holland, is that North Somerset Council brings Avon Wildlife Trust in to do something that, again, could have actually been adequately covered by existing groups in the ground, or asking them to perform a role which could have been adequately done by existing groups in the area. They're not going to cover everything. But
I'm assuming Avon Wildlife Trust was used because it's a district-wide project. Therefore, we needed a group who would cover the district. They have the expertise and the training and the knowledge and everything else. Yes, you do as well, but you don't cover Banwell, for example.
No, but there are groups, you know, again, did North Somerset Council ever actually do an audit of the local groups from the outset and go, we need to talk to these people from the outset?
I know that we're aware of pretty much all the groups, unless they've not told us they exist. Because I know, I've asked one of the team to give me a list of all the groups that are out there, and I was given a list of all the groups that North Somerset are in contact with. Well,
you say that, and yet we had that.
If we're not aware of a group out there, we can't work with them.
Yeah, but then again, we had that big meeting at the folk hall. We had all the media coverage. We had all the hoopla, everything to do with the Wild Portishead thing in June 2019, and then apparently our meeting came as a surprise to some people at North Somerset Council. So it's kind of like you can stand there and you can shout and you can make all the noise you want, but if the council isn't actually, if the district council rather isn't actually equipped or doesn't have the facilities to actually, not think on its feet, but be that observant, then you're always going to be up against it. Sorry, we're going to go back to mowing in a minute, but this is this goes back to the thing that I know it sounds like we're constantly kind of like Groundhog Day here. But it seems to be a district council creating problems and then coming up with solutions to its own problems, but they're not actually resolving what is going on the ground. And then what you get is you're just told, well, but there are a lot of people on board with this. There's a lot of enthusiasm for this, but it's a bit nebulous. as a local group, and this kind of proves a point really, we as a local group, we look to see what's posted on social media because we are very keen to see what people's reactions are to rewilding, and we
on social
check,
media who don't like rewilding.
So there immediately, you know, that is a PR problem for the district council, that you're not getting the message out. And all this is connected. You're not getting the message out because you're not engaging with people who could actually get that message out for you. I think that's is that fair to say, Chris? That's really the problem.
I like to think that I've been engaging with the two of you and Laura. I like to think that I have been talking about this with you both over the last 2 years. Even during lockdown, I've managed
we have been talking about it, but we've also been involved with meetings with, you know, sat in on North Somerset Council meetings and spoke to other councillors. But unfortunately, the general feeling is it's talks about talks. It's always some hypothetical kind of jam tomorrow scenario when something's going to happen, but then it's going to be more talks. And then suddenly you're told that then you're suddenly told that we're appointing a role and we're bringing in people to do something, and we're just sat there thinking, this is exactly what we could have been doing. Why weren't you having that conversation with us? And that's the really frustrating thing, is that it's like we're being talked at, but we're not being talked to. I think that's the difference. That people are saying they're hearing us, but are they actually listening to us?
I don't think I could ever be accused of talking at you, Jonathan.
No, absolutely. Very few people do. But but Chris, go on. What was the point you're going to make, Chris?
Well, no, I think in fairness to Nicola, she has talked to us, and I know that we've met on locations as well, haven't we, Nicola? We've walked sites, but I think, you know, I go back to the most frustrating thing for me, for example, is and I've said this to you, Nicola, before, is that I feel like I've got solutions to things, and I just feel like I'm not being listened to, and I feel like at the beginning of this we had a brilliant idea. For instance, just with the trees, what we were going to do was get the public to actually adopt trees that they finally decide on where to put them. Now, obviously, we would be then the go-between between the council and the public, so to speak, but it's a very much ground-up approach. And I've got to say that I've now met two other groups, not in North Somerset, in a different district, who have actually done that, and it's turning into a brilliant project. And there's no use of tree guards, etc. So I think, Nicola, you have been fair. You have talked to us, and you have listened. But I don't think, if you were to admit it, that you've got things through as well. And I know I've spoken to many other councillors.
I've had to work within boundaries, Chris. I've had to work.
I understand that totally.
There's a certain way of the officers work so hard, but there's a certain stricture that they're constrained by, and things have to go through this hoop and that hoop, and before things can be done. So when it comes down to things like this, it would be lovely if people could. I mean, I've got trees that I actually asked if I had trees that that had self-seeded in my front, and I potted them up, ready for, because of what you'd said, Chris, a couple of years ago. And when it came to planting on the golf course, I spoke to the tree officer who was looking after that, and Ian, who was there at the time. I said, would I be allowed to bring down my trees that I've potted up? She said, yes. So I did that. I went down with my kids and we planted our trees, just about 5 or 6, I can't remember exactly. We planted our trees out there. So we did exactly what you said. But unfortunately, we haven't been able to do that with the general public because of COVID. It would have been lovely. It would have been so lovely. And we have been given these whips by Woodland Trust for free. They were donated to us for free. They're not a cost to us. So when it comes down to what we can do over the next planting season and the planting season after that, and this is supposed to be a 5-year project. So we've got 3 more planting seasons. Maybe we could do something like that, but we are still constrained by where we can and where we can't. So it would be lovely if people come along and say, I'd like to plant a tree in X place, but we'd have to be able to say to them, actually, you can't plant in X, but you can plant in Y, and you can choose where in Y.
Yeah. Can I just ask another question, and I'm going to hand back to Jonathan. And this question is basically to do with longevity. So when's the election? How many years have you got? How many years have you got left?
May 23.
Can
just before the train comes in.
Can you and the rest of your current councillors make it so that what you've started doesn't then get thrown out if a new administration comes straight in?
We want to get as much done as possible on the off chance that we're not still here. It's so vital. This is one of the issues with the way politics works, where everything, nobody can look in the long term because nobody knows if they're going to be here in the long term, and everything has to be done on a short term basis. And that's not necessarily the best way to work, is it? Especially when you're talking about trees. So I can't see any reason for any future administration to uplift the trees, but I can't say what they do about the long grass.
And that's one of the reasons, again, why right at the beginning of this I came up with this idea of a ground up approach, because it becomes the people's project, not the political project.
No, and I can appreciate that. But unfortunately, even though I do not I'm an independent, I don't call myself a politician, God forbid. I like to think I'm just on a very, very big PTA. It's something that we have to bring the public in, but unfortunately we're still not there with all the public. And as much as we'd love to have pretty much 95, you can never please all the people all the time. If we had 95% agreement on what's going where, that would be fabulous. But I can't see that happening in less than 2 years.
We got a comment here from Julie Hitchens. She says, once again, though, we get back to duplication between local groups and AWT. And to point out, I am actually a member of AWT, and I've been a member of AWT for over 25 years. So let's just sort that little bit out. Caritas Charles says NSC need a consultation engagement structure. It doesn't exist at present. And I would say, I would actually kind of piggyback on the back of what Councillor Charles has said there, is that we have asked through Portishead Town Council, and I know Portishead Town Council have asked of North Somerset Council to have could we please have a work schedule for the town, so that we can see what work is being done in Portishead. So a quarterly work schedule, right?
I've tried. Can I just come in with that one? Now I've been passed on a rough guide, but it is only rough because it can change at a moment's notice. So I could share it with you, but I wouldn't want to share it with the public, because then the public would expect that to happen there. And if anything changes, then they'd be up in arms. Everything changes. This need suddenly happens elsewhere, and the team were going to do this patch suddenly have to do that patch. But I can certainly discuss with you the rough schedule that we've been given.
I think it's more a case of, and we've had a comment here from Faith Moulin, who says about there we go, it's a good one here. She says Whips and Arnold's Way Yatton mown right up to and even mown over by council contractors. So I think we need to it's more a case of being able to get in contact.
Some of the Glendale staff need training as well. That's one of, as we said before about the guards. Sometimes it is the guards are needed for human activity as well as for animal activity. And yet again, it's an accident and it happens, and we're trying to prevent those kind of accidents. But we're aware it happens, and we're hoping that the tree guards will stop it from happening. And can I just make a comment about Caritas's? Caritas knows that there's an engagement consultation strategy being formed at the moment.
Right. Just a quick one then is that we do have instances, and Chris, your mining bees are a very good example. of where in the past where we've said to the district council, please, can you not mow this bit? Because at certain times of the year, this is an important kind of habitat for bees. Thankfully, the message has finally got through. But
who have you been speaking to? Who have you passed those messages on to? Can I ask?
Well, hang on. That before we go into that goes back to the previous administration. Right. So basically, I was in contact with the previous administration, and one particular district councillor took it upon himself to dash out and actually stop the crew cutting the grass whilst they were engaged, and told them in no uncertain terms they weren't cutting it because of the bees. That's good. Ever since then, we haven't had a problem. But let me finish. In fairness, the crew do come and do a once a year cut, which is absolutely fine. And I have no problems with that whatsoever. And what they do is absolutely correct. But if we're talking about what the crews do, again, you have to go back to the previous administration when it was tried to be set up by the vice chairman of Portishead Town Council at the time. I can't remember her name. What was it? What was her name? Anyway, that doesn't matter. And basically, she was setting up with Jonathan and myself for a round table discussion with the contractors and with the local councillors. And obviously that didn't happen because we had a change. So ever since then, we've been trying for that. And I know other groups have as well. And these are little niggly, frustrating things that can be overcome with proper dialogue and conversation.
And I think this comes down to this. Sorry, Chris, I'm going to say this comes down to the kind of the crux of this is that it's not that we're not asking for kind of like we're not kind of like trying to ask for grand schemes. We're not asking for kind of like money to be spent that isn't there. It is just simple little conversations so that we could say, do you know what? You really don't need to mow that particular verge there because that's been absolutely kind of that's had loads of clover and it's had cornflowers coming up, and now North Somerset Council have come along and just leveled it flat. Meanwhile, you could have actually done this. You could have actually done this instead. And it comes back to that thing about. Go on.
I see the two absolutely delightful women who have organised the community orchard on Welly Bottom. Yeah. They came to me and said, "Could you ask the team to stop mowing quite so close to the trees?" I went back and I said, "Can you ask them not to mow so?" They didn't mow quite so close to the trees, but in actual fact, it was probably about an inch that they were, an inch extra. I went back and I said, "They're still mowing too close to the trees. Can you please?" So basically, dialogue, a couple of emails, and it's been agreed that the entire area around the fruit trees will be left in the same way that the area around the whips that are there has been left. And that was just a simple email. "Could you please?" And I said, "Could you please?" And it came back to me, "Yes, of course we will."
Which is brilliant.
So that eventually the grass between, which will help with mulching those trees because of course they're older than they need more care and attention than the young trees. I know a lot of people find it hard to get the whips need very little maintenance because their roots are so small, and whereas the older trees need not constant. They need regular watering during dry spells such as this. Hopefully the thunderstorm that we're scheduled for this weekend will help with the watering issue. Hello, Chris.
Okay, so we're gonna wrap this up in a minute. Yeah, go on.
Yeah, I know we are, but I've got a couple of questions in from our guest next month. So this is a good plug for our guest next month, who is going to be Ian Parsons, who's a national tree expert. And he says two things. He's been watching, and he says if people are moaning about long grass, embrace the opportunity to educate them. And point two, he says, planting is a cost, even if trees are free.
And that's where we had the volunteers, or we were supposed to have the volunteers to come in and plant. The first year, it was volunteer run. Well, not volunteer, it was officer run, but it was basically volunteers out there planting that first season's trees. This last year, we've had to use Glendale because we can't use volunteers, although I nipped over the fence when I saw what was happening down there and offered myself and my children. And I actually saw other people wandering down and saying, can I plant a few trees? But we couldn't have any organised sessions. Come next winter, all things being equal, we'll have more volunteers planting trees.
Right, we got a comment here from Evelyn Groundsell. She says, no strategy, no data baseline, no resources, constraints. Delegation to local groups will lead to action and longevity. So,
exactly.
And one final question here. We'll end on a high. As Denise Hunt says, what are the future plans / next steps?
As I said, hoping to work with local landowners, and this is where we really need people their own back gardens. My front garden is it's not as meadow as I want it to be. There's not enough. I want more wildflowers out there. I've got a vast array of wildflowers out there that's still not enough. My back garden, I haven't mown it. I don't think I've mown it at all this year. We want people to do that. We want people to see long grass and say, isn't that fabulous? Instead of seeing long grass and saying, oh my God, that needs mowing.
Okay, just to clarify,
are you aware of our project? Are you aware of our project? We've got lots of people. Yeah, not just that. We've had people who have left their parts of their lawns. We're not asked them to meet a meadow.
Yes, I did hear, yes. Because I remember saying to you, I'd pretty much left everything, and you said leave a bit more, and I was like, but I can't, I've left everything.
Just to clarify, Councillor,
there's always more.
When you say landowners, my first impression there is you're talking to people. You're talking to people who own kind of like huge fields and things like that. What you're actually talking about is
it's not just farm owners. It's people who do own estates and such. But we're talking agriculture. We're talking estate, owners.
Right. Okay.
If you look at, the National Trust own a large amount of land around here. They're doing what they can. You've got schools that are getting. Just Gordano. I had a letter through from Gordano, with a child there, stating about what they've done this last year, and one of the things they're really, really proud of is they've got a team of students working with teachers and leaving large areas unmown, and the seeds are coming up and the flowers. It's just gorgeous, as well as planting fruit and veg and learning about.
I wonder who went in and started that.
I think it might have been somebody in this room. And you, I also understand that you've been up to my son's school as well, talking about in your role as the Owl and Hawk Trust up to Highdown.
You mean Highdown School? Yes.
Well,
yes. Yeah. I'm not wearing that jumper tonight.
So there's all the schools are getting involved as well. So when you think about the amount of land that schools have at their disposal, and the fact that these schools are getting their pupils involved, and let's face it starts with the kids nagging their parents. Why are you doing, Daddy? Why are you mowing that lawn? Mummy, why are you weeding that patch? Yeah, it's great if we can get the kids on board.
It does.
No, absolutely. Right, we are going to have to, unfortunately, sadly, wrap for tonight. But there are so many things we could still carry on talking about.
Plug next month.
I'm just going to say, a plug for next month, and that is on Sunday, the 1st of August at 3 p.m. on Merlin Park Field. There will be a socially distanced, you know what I mean, a safe and sensible gathering of people to essentially make a message about saving our fields, protecting Western Bigwood, saying no to development on the down, and the need that wildlife has in the fields there. And this is probably
that's a picture from Northwestern. That's a picture from Northwestern, and a simultaneous one will take place in Northwestern.
Yeah, so there will be two going on at the same time. So if you can come along, please, and support that and be there for the photographs, that would be fantastic. It's you know, as we said on the previous show, far from anything taking place, any building around Western Bigwood actually needs to expand. And
can I jump in and say, if Dr. Liam Fox, our MP, is watching, we would love to see you there as well.
Yeah, I think we'll send an invite to him. I think you
should, because if I keep talking at district level, I keep talking to my fellow councillors about the situation of building that close to an SSSI.
Yeah, absolutely. We are really, really grateful that for you coming on tonight, Councillor Hon. I know you're probably thinking we've given you a hard time, but we genuinely
no harder than usual, Jonathan. No harder than usual. I'm used to it.
Genuinely do appreciate you coming along. Well, and to be honest with you, sticking your head above the parapet. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Head above the parapet, because
can I also say, I hope you feel, Nicola, that also we've got solutions to problems.
And
I think that's really, really important.
Jonathan, Chris, we will keep talking.
Yeah, we're not sitting here and just complaining. We are frustrated.
We do come up with the solutions.
Yeah, because we do have the solutions.
Every time I see somebody complaining about long grass, I'm frustrated too.
Well, can I just say I've been advocating on a regional and national basis long grass since the mid-1980s. So I'm the one you need to get out there and get educating people.
And if people,
but that's one for another time.
Oh yeah, we need another time.
Right, I think we are sadly going to have to wrap this tonight. But again, we are very, very grateful to Councillor Nicola Holland for coming on tonight. As I say, we're actually sticking her head above the trench and, coming along here because as we've known in the past, Chris, is that sometimes you engage with people and nothing comes back. So we're very grateful to Councillor Holland. Thank you very much for coming on tonight. Yeah, genuinely thank you. And we will be back with another live show very, very soon because we've got so much to talk about, and we are going to try and keep the momentum of various projects going on as well. So until then, it remains for us to say thank you again to Councillor Holland. Thank you to everybody watching tonight. Thank you to Chris. Thank you to the weather for actually allowing me to actually come out here and do this. And I'm going
to go in water now.
Yes, well, we will be back.
I'm so hot. I need a shower, so I'm going to go quick.
No, that's not why you need a shower for, Chris. Anyway,
you forgot to mention our guest next month is Ian Parsons, National Tree Expert.
You've already mentioned Ian Parsons coming on. You've mentioned it. Yeah. Our guest.
He's watching. Hello, Ian.
Our guest on the next show is Ian Parsons, National Tree Expert. Everybody happy? Right. Excellent. We will see you all very, very soon. Bye for now.